Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the next video in my Mould 2017 series. In the last video in the series, I got the walls drywalled and plastered up. If you missed that video, you can check it out up here. Today I am focusing on installing the subfloor and the laminate flooring. There's been a little bit of a time jump here since I was working on both the floor and painting at the same time, but that will be in the next video. To start this off, I pulled the vacuum out and clean up the concrete again before I start laying the floating subfloor. Since this wall isn't perfectly square, I laid the subfloor up right beside the drywall, and with my oscillating saw, I cut the drywall flush with the top of the subfloor. And with that done, this piece of subfloor is square to the top wall, which will be the wall I'm working off of the rest of the way through. With the corner set, I can start laying down the rest of the subfloor sheets. I decided to go with these subfloor panels since, well, honestly, they were on sale at the time. And what I like about these is that they have this corrugated plastic on the bottom side, which allows for an airspace between the concrete and the OSB. And then if the crack I repaired a couple videos back ever fails, if you missed that video, you can also check it out up here. The flooring should be safe since there won't be any water contact with the wood. They just have a tongue and groove joint that needs to be knocked together, and it ends up being pretty sturdy. As far as I know, anyway. Seems okay to me. So I carry on with this through the rest of the flooring, offsetting the next row 50% or so to strengthen the seams even more. To protect the tongue, I just cut myself a little jig, which was basically a dado through some scrap wood to give me a little bit of a better surface to smack it with a hammer. Once I get up to the carpet edge, I figure that carpet's a little less messy to cut, so I lay down the panels I can before the carpet gets too tight, and then cut out the carpet to meet the edge of the subfloor. And then I repeat the same process in the closet. A couple days later, my brother was in town, so I got him to help me install the new carpet tack strips. If I was working on a wood floor, this would have been a lot easier to install, but since I'm working on concrete, I'm using polyurethane construction adhesive to glue the tack strips to the floor, and then weighing them down with whatever is handy to keep them in place until the glue cures. And again, same thing for the closet. About a week or so later, since at this point the laminate flooring we picked up has been acclimatizing in our basement for, well, at least a week, I start laying down the laminate, starting in the closet since it was easy. I lay down the underlay, and since this is a 4x4 foot section, I'm not going to bother with any of the offset for the laminate here. It saves on cutting, and the pattern in the laminate is random enough that it isn't going to be an issue. And since the flooring in the closet is done, I break out my cheap carpet kicker and boot the carpet back onto the tack strips. Back in the main room, we had a little bit of a design change, and we decided to bring the laminate all of the way through the length of the room. So I lay out a line and cut the carpet more or less straight. And since there's nothing wrong with this portion of carpet, I'm going to hold on to it, and maybe I'll recarpet my cat stand or something like that. That could be an interesting video. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that. Unfortunately, this also means that some of the tack strips I just installed need to come back out. But whatever, they're cheap. And then I carry on installing the rest of the subfloor. Doorways are always a fun thing to notch around. Basically, I would lay the piece in place, mark it, cut it, bring it back to see where it needed to be cut next, rinse and repeat as many times as I needed to make sure it fit into the space I needed it to. I'm sure there's better ways of doing it, but I found that that works best for me. Once the subfloor was done, I start back at the laminate. I roll out the underlay and square up the laminate with the top wall with a couple spacers to allow for expansion and contraction. Each row pretty much consisted of 2 full pieces and 1 roughly quarter piece. I think the documentation that came with the flooring said to allow for roughly a 50% overlay, but in this circumstance I felt like it would be a bit wasteful, so what I ended up doing was at the end of the row I'd mark off the area needed, and the offcut left over was the start of the next row. And then basically I just carried on through the rest of the floor again. An issue I did come across was since there was only 2 walls I was working with, as I was tapping in the pieces of one row, the previously laid rows seemed to keep creeping forward. And every so often I would have to go back, reset the spacer block, and knock the previous rows back into place. If I was doing the entire room, I don't think this would have been an issue, since then it would have been contained on the 3 non-work edges. But live and learn.
Hello, that's YouTube channel.
When it came to the doors, I needed to cut some of the trim back. What I found to be the easiest is to lay a scrap piece of flooring you are using and use that as a guide to cut the trim flush with the flooring for the flooring to fit right underneath. Only a few more rows on that need to do.
This looks so good!
So, we're up to the last piece, and this was a serious piss off. I almost had the exact amount of flooring for this job. I screwed up on exactly one piece. Guess how many pieces I needed to finish this job? Yep. I needed to open the extra pack of flooring I picked up to get the one extra piece I needed. Guess I'm not getting any money back on this project since I can't return this box anymore. With all of the laminate now laid, the last step before I pull out all of the spacers is to knock the flooring back against the back wall. For the rows going into the doorway, I just close the door and use the door itself as the stop, since I will have to figure out the transition to the carpet either way. And then this way it gives me a defined edge. And then I can glue in the new carpet tack strips. Again. Then, since all of my measurements for the ends of the rows were, fairly approximate, the end rows were kind of jagged. So with my chalk line, I snap a straight line and cut the ends of the rows smooth with my circular saw, and then burn through about 6 different blades on my oscillating saw by the walls where the circular saw didn't fit. For the transition between the laminate and the existing carpet, I'm going to use this vinyl transition. To secure this down, you can use this aluminum track, which I cut into several roughly 1 foot long segments, and then glued them to the subfloor with some polyurethane construction adhesive. Before installing the vinyl, however, I tried to kick the carpet in with my little carpet kicker and was met with fairly limited success, so I gave up on that for now. A couple days later, some cleanup, moving all of the contents of the room over to the laminate, and then renting a carpet stretcher, I was able to stretch the carpet onto the new nail strips. Took about 10 minutes including setup time. Crazy what you can do with the proper tools. Though, I don't see myself buying a carpet stretcher anytime soon. Now it's finally time to install the vinyl. To make it a little easier on myself, and since I don't have a heat gun, I went and borrowed my wife's light duty heat gun. Apparently she uses it on her hair. This little bit of extra heat made the vinyl a little bit more malleable and a lot easier to work with since it just popped into place. A couple months later, I figured I should finally get around to installing the door transitions, which may or may not have needed some customization with some double-sided tape and a table saw. The downside of the thicker flooring is that the door doesn't quite fit anymore, but I could still technically close it. So I did that and then marked out a cut line by pretty much dragging a pencil along the floor and cutting it to length with the circular saw. Then with that door done, I do the next one pretty much the same way, except the transition gap was a little bit bigger, since that room just had linoleum glued down to the concrete with nearly an inch difference in height. But with that, I'm going to call it a video. This was a long process, but definitely worth it in the end, even with the mid-project redesign. There were a few different learning curveballs thrown at me, and I definitely picked up a couple things to remember for the next time I have to do this. Not sure when that is, and not sure if I really want to, but either way. Until then, thank you guys for watching, and if you like what I'm doing here, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more. If you have any questions or comments, I look forward to reading them in the comment section below. And if you want to see more current projects, you can follow me on Instagram at JohnTheSchreiner. Otherwise, I hope to see you in the next video, and have a good one.